In New Mexico, a serial killer is at large. For over 30 years, someone or something has swept across the southwest United States, leaving a trail of over 10,000 animal victims in its wake. Death is sudden, and yet the exact cause is still unknown. Body parts and organs are removed with surgical precision. The carcasses show signs of massive hemorrhaging, yet the crime scenes themselves are mysteriously void of any blood or tissue. There are even cases where farmers report seeing bright lights in the sky, army helicopters, and even UFOs. A wave of hysteria has gripped New Mexico and the surrounding states, with everyone asking the same questions. Who's mutilating the cattle and why? And are the authorities covering up the most prolific serial killer in modern history? Just what are these reported mutilations, and who exactly is doing them? Cattle rustlers, Satanists, UFOs, or covert military operations? After a year of investigation, fieldwork and analysis, there are some intriguing clues that lead to some surprising culprits.
The curious thing about cattle mutilation is that at first you kind of think lightly of it and that it's not really that important of a call, but when you get at the scene and you actually see this animal on the ground and you see that it appears that the eyes have been surgically taken out, or it's just kind of, it gives you a really weird feeling that there's some foul play involved, and as an officer you want to investigate, you want to try to get to the bottom of it because it's something that baffles you.
And it's a crime, whether it's the government, a cult, or something from outer space or inner space or another dimension or whatever, or whoever is doing it. It's a crime and it costs us money.
Extraterrestrial biological entities have been killing and mutilating animals around this planet since at least the 1950s. And our government knows it, and our government has not wanted anyone to pay attention to it or to realize it.
I truly think they're testing the cows. It's a biological type testing that they're doing, and they're doing it at random. My question is, why do they bring them back?
I don't know for sure what's going on there, but I do know that we have to look at more prosaic explanations first before we go into the realms of absolute fantasy. For example, we need to look at whether there are satanic cults operating in these areas. We also need to check out whether we're dealing with simply a combination of people stealing cattle, rustling going on, and in some circumstances perhaps these animals being predated by things like cougars and wildcats.
To my mind, when there is an earthly phenomenon such as cattle mutilations, albeit a very mysterious earthly phenomenon, it only makes sense to look for an earthly cause or an earthly explanation.
Looking at it from the standpoint of a mystery or an unsolved homicide, if you will, the books are staying open until the case is solved.
The first reported mutilation was believed to have been in 1967 in Colorado. The carcass had bizarre injuries and had decomposed at an unnaturally fast rate. When a local farmer reported that an unidentified object had hovered over her ranch the day before, the press immediately linked the mutilation to UFOs. Since 1967, over 10,000 cattle have been carved up and left strewn across the fields of southwestern America, but no one knows who's doing it or why. The mutilations have been blamed mostly on coyotes and wild dogs, but some say the injuries are too precise to have been carried out by a predator. In many cases, the cattle have had broken limbs and what might be strap marks on their legs, which could indicate that they've been lifted out of the fields in a harness, then dropped back down to earth from a great height. Some people claim the US government has been reluctant to act on the mutilations. In the face of such official indifference, the ranchers have turned to independent researchers and journalists for answers.
Cattle mutilation that we think took samples a few minutes ago of the udder, the rectum, the nasal cavity, and this will be sent to 3 different labs.
The major investigations into cattle mutilations have been carried out by David Perkins, Chris O'Brien, Gail Stalin and Linda Moulton Howe. Between them, they've collated reports on hundreds of cases, photographed the evidence and carried out amateur forensic investigations in the field.
If you've never seen one, it's totally amazing. It's just, as soon as I saw my first one, I was hooked, and I decided to devote my life to this.
When you see a big mutilated cow on the ground, that's a pretty tangible item.
1,000 pounds of physical evidence.
That's always been the intriguing part of this for me is, lights in the sky are lights in the sky. Who knows what they could be or might have been or might be. But when you see the cow on the ground, it's very, very striking.
I ask myself, who or what could be doing this to these animals? And it is a crime. Whatever it is, or whoever is doing it, it's a crime, and it should be treated as a crime.
I have half a dozen eyewitnesses who, over the last 15 years, have told me, total conscious, that they have watched something that was round and glowing put down a beam of light. They've either seen the animal lifted up or they have seen the animal put down. As a journalist, as an investigative journalist, I have to report this is what people are seeing. This is what people themselves have experienced. And I think that all the rest of us need to pay attention to what eyewitnesses are saying.
A typical mutilation is characterized by sudden, unexplained death, missing organs, and bizarre cuts which are only high-deep. The parts that are taken are similar in all reported cases.
An eye, the tissue around an eye.
The sexual organs are gone.
The tongue, completely so deep in the throat that it often takes the larynx and the trachea.
There might be an eye removed with the eyelashes still intact.
And the rectal tissue in probably 95% of the cases poured out.
There's no blood. You might have a little bit of pooling in the body cavity.
Why? Sometimes the tail.
It's quite a sight when you see one.
According to reports, the Southwest has been hit hard by cattle mutilations, northern New Mexico especially so. It was there in Taos in 1994 that one of the most terrifying incidents ever reported took place. On September the 13th, Larry Gardia was out bear hunting in the woods when he heard a terrifying high-pitched noise coming from the trees. The noise sent a herd of cattle into a stampede.
Everything happened so quick, when I heard that noise, then all of a sudden I heard the cows that had passed, and I turned around and I saw them all running the opposite direction.
As they ran past him, he said he turned to see 2 mutilated animals on the ground.
First thing I saw was the back part of the cow where it had the 3-inch hole. There's no blood, no nothing. It looks like they just, like a laser. To me, it looks like some type of sophisticated laser that just cut right half of its right face, and it cut it off.
Larry said a third cow was screaming in pain as it was being dragged several feet off the ground into some trees. Larry raised his rifle and fired in its direction.
I turned back to look toward that noise where the other third cow that was alive was being dragged. And I kept looking at it, and I kept seeing that it was trying to get back on its feet. It was floating. I shot once, and the noise just kept on. And the second shot, I aimed maybe 20 feet further in front of the first shot, and that's when the noise stopped.
Three dead cows were found exactly as Larry had described to the police, in a pasture several miles from where they'd been grazing. But the officers found no tracks, no footprints, and no evidence to explain how they could have got there. So just what did happen in this field in 1994? What was the high-pitched noise? What technology could create an energy beam capable of lifting a 900-pound cow in the air? Military experts at Jane's Defence Weekly said that this technology had indeed been developed, and that far from being extraterrestrial in origin, it was being used by covert elements of the US military.
If they have broken through that barrier, they'll want to keep quiet about it. And if it's as radical as some people speculate, then they would want to keep quiet about it, not just for a number of years, but for decades, possibly up to 100 years.
Larry Gardia wasn't alone. In Cuesta, north of Taos, rancher Tom Reed was suffering repeated horrors night after night. His ranch had become a centre for bizarre activity. He kept a log of over 30 mutilations since 1994, but he says it was one particular incident with such horrific wounds that finally made him speak out.
I had a vet come up and take a look at it, and he just kind of glanced at it. It says coyotes. Well, I've seen what coyotes do. They chew up things and make ragged edges and so on, and the cuts were real clean on this. Something or somebody or whatever had made some clean, smooth cuts way up inside the body cavity, and just very cleanly and neatly cleaned it out.
In 30 years, there's only been one official investigation of cattle mutilations. In 1978, retired FBI agent Ken Rommel visited 15 mutilation cases, but without a vet and without carrying out any autopsies. He concluded that the cattle mutilations were the result of natural predators. The ranchers called it a whitewash, and since then, there's been no other official investigation.
I think there's some very suspicious origins to that report.
You know, it's very easy to come and blame it on predators and just don't take any action on it, but nobody actually comes up with an answer.
He not only didn't carry on any autopsies, he didn't talk to any medical pathologists. I've talked to medical pathologists who are in serious disagreement with his report.
I talked to Ken Rommel during the time that they had the investigation. None of the victims were interviewed. You just have to make a decision on yourself. If you're a real solid, a good investigator and you don't interview the victims, there's something lacking there.
Well, I think it's damn strange. And you know, whether we non-farmers, non-ranchers want to define it as a serious problem, they certainly do. I mean, if nothing else, there's a $1,000 to $2,000 loss, I guess, per carcass. Well, it's a tremendous loss. It's a property crime that needs to be investigated if we're going to solve this, not this mystery, solve this crime.
In Taos, New Mexico, the district attorney, John Paternoster, has reopened the mutilation files and has promised to treat each individual case as a homicide investigation.
The federal government was doing nothing. State government was doing nothing. There had never been an aggressive forensic investigation task force or protocol developed to give any answers. And our first determination was that these cattle mutilation events should be handled like a crime scene, like a homicide crime scene. That would guarantee that competent evidence would be found at the scene, would be collected for analysis that would yield some hard facts.
I'm glad, and I'm very, very glad that someone like John Paternoster, DA of Taos County, where there have been so many occurrences, has taken it seriously. Previous DAs should have. I think some of the more recent cases in Taos County are beginning to assemble some harder evidence in terms of chemical byproducts and so forth and so on. But for the vast majority, almost for all of the cases, not enough hard evidence to really arrive at any conclusions. And that's precisely why we need to treat this more scientifically and do some good criminalistics and good forensics. And I think we'll come up with the hard evidence.
I've been shot at in this business years in the past. I don't have any fear that would distract me from the inquiry that is so important to ranchers in this area.
One of the first mutilation cases to be investigated as a homicide was in Aoyo Seco, a rural area just outside Taos. Rancher Manuel Archuleta says he found his 11-month-old bull dead and mutilated, having seen the animal in perfect health only days before.
It was a normal day. I just check my cows every morning, every day. And this day I walked out there on the 30th of April, and they were okay, just normal, eating. The next morning I went to check them again. I found the bull dead. I hadn't seen anything like that before. I've heard about it, but I hadn't seen it around here.
Manuel called the DA's office, and a task force swung into action.
This particular morning, which was May 4th, 1997, I was on call from 4 in the morning till 8 in the morning. Our radio dispatch advised me at approximately 7:30 in the morning that there was a farmer, Mr. Archuleta from Aoyo Seco, was reporting one of his small calves had been possibly mutilated.
Within a few hours, 4 units from the sheriff's office had cordoned off the area and a crime scene had been established. District Attorney John Paternoster was joined by his associate Dominic Martinez and field investigator Gay Valdez from the National Institute of Discovery Science. Donning protective clothing, they prepared for a full field necropsy.
The curious thing about cattle mutilation is that at first you kind of think lightly of it and that it's not really that important of a call, but when you get at the scene and you actually see this animal on the ground and you see that it appears that the eyes have been surgically taken out, or it's just kind of, it gives you a really weird feeling that there's some foul play involved. And as an officer, you want to investigate, you want to try to get to the bottom of it because it's something that baffles you.
As I approached, I saw no evidence that people other than Mr. Archuleta had been out there. I saw what appeared to me to be a young bull in a corner of a fence. It had a rather grievous wound on its hindquarters, and it had been dead for, unfortunately, a number of days when we first got to the scene.
We went ahead and skinned it and discovered a big hole in the neck, about 5 by 8, that appeared to have some burn marks on it inside.
We did find a substance that we just called a yellow powder. It didn't seem to belong on the animal. It was found around this neck wound, a small hole in the neck of the animal.
The substance was analysed. It showed a lethal dose of potassium, 7,000% more than you would normally find in a dead animal. The forensic scientists in charge of the analysis have no explanation as to how it got there. Like so many mutilation cases before, the perpetrator left no calling card. There were no tyre tracks or footprints. But there was one intriguing clue: the pattern of the cowpats.
We were speculating that maybe something had flown over the field and had lifted these pies and flipped them over, like a helicopter or something like that. It was just really bizarre. As we started to work the crime scene, we determined that there was actually a pattern. It looked like there was a corridor of these pies that had been turned over.
They're talking about something out of space, I guess, UFOs, and I don't know what to think, what it could be. It's a strange thing going on.
Given the lack of physical evidence at the scene, there's no man-made print and no animal print present, which leads me to believe that there might be either some advanced technology involved or that they covered their tracks very, very well.
We have not ruled out UFOs as a pet theory. The Aoyo Seco scene did yield some very curious marks in the soil, in the land around the animal that did not appear to be natural in origin.
As the team skinned the animal, they noticed that the tissue on its back was blood red, showing signs of massive hemorrhaging. Hemorrhaging that can only have been caused by a fatal blow from above. Is the Aoyo Seco bull a smoking gun? Is it the first hard evidence that the perpetrators are airborne?
I have to say we ruled out, as far as I'm concerned, a satanic ritual as being behind the cattle mutilation that victimized Mr. Archuleta's herd. There was no evidence at all of any human activity around that mutilated cow whatsoever. The black helicopter pet theory seems to be the most persistent of all of the theories that we have heard as being at the root of the cattle mutilations.
The precise surgical nature of the entry wounds, the lack of blood and tissue, and the entrails around the bodies, and the literal frying of the blood at high temperatures are the three big questions facing investigators.
We've had some testing done on the samples that I've taken, and the results have come back where it is done with very high heat.
Quite a number of cases, in excess of 30 or 40 now. High heat has been the cutting instrument. Now, coyotes have bad breath, but not 350-degree bad breath. So we may be dealing with something that is utilizing high technology.
We are aware that certain of the military installations in New Mexico have technology that could very well have caused these kinds of injuries.
Cattle mutilations are characterized by wounds on the animals seemingly made by surgical laser devices, some kind of surgical laser scalpels, if you will. I've discovered in recent years that the United States Air Force has such a device which they developed in-house, a field-capable, portable belt-pack surgical laser that is powered by dry cell batteries.
We've managed to obtain footage of the laser pack from one of the United States' most secure research facilities. This laser would be the perfect device to cut through cowhide and remove organs in the field.
Weapons-class lasers can consist of millions of watts of power. The same technology was used to create this self-contained laser. The laser would be used by a surgeon in the battlefield to do laser surgery.
If surgical lasers are used to cut open the cows, just how are they transported out of these landlocked pastures without being detected? Strange lights in the sky and unmarked helicopters have been reported just before and after mutilations are discovered. If no tyre tracks or footprints are found around the animals, are the mutilators airborne?
A lot of the cases I've handled, the only way you go in is with an aircraft. There's no other way you can go in. There's no other tracks leading into the fenced area, the ranch, and there's no other way they could have gone in.
This is the one that really turned my head around, way out in the middle of nowhere. A female cow lying on its right side, and it looked like it had been dropped from at least 1,000 feet in the air. Its horn was driven back into the side of its head where it hit on that side and drove the horn right back into the skull. Its leg was broken, its ribs were broken, and Officer Valdez pointed out a band about perhaps 2 inches of indented hair. He speculated that it had been grabbed from the air somehow and hoisted up by its back legs, mutilated in the air, and dropped back to the ground.
There has been some cases where people have seen a cow underneath a helicopter in a harness, like it's being airlifted someplace. In broad daylight, we've got a couple of cases like that.
In the mid-'70s, ranchers were firing at helicopters, and the public service companies had to fly much higher. There were several incidents where ranchers shot at helicopters, and that's why one of the reasons why they've tried to put a damper on this, because the situation was potentially very dangerous.
I've had a number of reports. People have been within feet of helicopters. Most of the time, they're reported hovering just over the individual, and they're blasted by the downdraft from the rotors, but there's no engine sound, nothing. Obviously, the jump one could make is that our government or military has some sort of sound cancellation or sound noise abatement equipment that they're managing somehow to render at least the motor part of the helicopter silent.
This is the cutting edge of military technology, so-called quiet helicopters. They use a no-tail rotor system, or NOTAR for short. They're designed to fly covert missions into sensitive areas without being detected. These helicopters are based at Kirtland Air Force Base, just a half-hour flight from Taos. 2 of America's top-secret research facilities are also based there: Sandia National Laboratory and the Phillips Laboratory, which has developed the laser medical pack. Many investigators suspect that this could be the final destination for the organs and tissue removed from the mutilated cattle. In looking for a suspect, many say that Kirtland Air Force Base seems to have the means, the motive, and the opportunity.
If there are covert operatives carrying out these cattle mutilations using technology developed by the United States Air Force, some of these units could feasibly be operating out of Kirtland Air Force Base.
The description that the ranchers give me on the helicopters that they see hovering over their ranches or their herd matches very closely with what I see out at the base here in Albuquerque.
As darkness fell on the base, a group of local investigators set out to monitor the skies and try and catch whatever it is that's flying over the fields of cattle. UFOs, black helicopters, or even secret military test craft.
monitoring a lot of the frequencies for the nearby Air Force bases, hoping to get some aircraft activity, anything they might be doing, stealth fighters, reconnaissance aircraft, things like that. We pick up a few things every now and then, and if we see a ship or anything out there, sometimes it could be accompanied by an Air Force craft surveilling it, chasing it down, what have you, and we might pick it up on the scanner. There's a data channel coming in there. Encrypted data transmission from a stealth fighter, or a stealth fighter pinging radar. They use intermittent radar on those craft. All the stealth.
At 1 a.m. on a freezing morning, their night sights pick up an unidentified flying object closing fast.
Oh, did you see that?
Whoa. Yeah, what was that? Did you see that light just come on over there?
That just
I was looking right at it.
Yeah.
Here, let me check it out.
Well, that was a shooting star.
Right above it was a meteor too. No, there's a steady light.
No, it's a steady light that just came
without
on.
any kind of.
No, this one right over the range here. It wasn't there, and then I was looking right there, and it blinked on.
That's very bright. That's brighter than a star.
It's not blinking. It's not conforming to any sort of FAA lighting regulations. And there you're looking at it. That is a UFO.
What was this unblinking light travelling at great speed towards them? Military or mystery?
It is possible to imagine technologies which are highly exotic, highly revolutionary, and would change the way we feel about science today.
It just seems improbable to me, but not impossible, that any group could be, that relies on conventional technology, could be pulling this off 10,000 times perfectly. It's the perfect crime every time, no mistakes.
If the military are launching covert nighttime helicopter raids into fields of cattle, the question is why?
I suspect the perpetrators of many of these cattle mutilations, and perhaps of most of them, and maybe even all of them, are much closer to home. In fact, I think that there could easily be covert human operations at work here that are responsible for the cattle mutilations.
The liver is still sitting.
And they go, a predator would grab that liver from the inside. You should have the
You can see the inside. The whole thing has been taken out. This is the rear end of the cow.
I don't believe the authorities are much help investigating the mutilations. They either poo-poo it, or they're scared of it, or they back off, or it seems like sometimes there's people above them that are pulling their strings and making them back off.
National livestock and agricultural associations are simply not interested in cattle mutilations. Despite the overwhelming statistics, they refuse to acknowledge that there's a serious problem.
I think there is some kind of a cover-up. If the government is not involved in it, I believe they're at least aware.
Nobody says much about it, and I guess they're trying to keep it sort of a secret.
Cattle inspectors for the New Mexico Livestock Board have been collecting reports on the mutilated animals for years, but the board's official line is clear. Cattle mutilations simply do not happen. Many believe that they're deliberately concealing reports and evidence.
We are talking about a cover-up here. There's just too many coincidences. The livestock board knows something. They've got to know something.
So just how far does this alleged cover-up go? Researchers claim that government agencies are responsible for the mutilations. Government agencies that take their orders from the White House.
The intelligence agencies have what are known as cutout operations, where there is an above-board, overt front door operation, if you will, while in the back room, the real business, the clandestine business goes on, where the dirty work is carried out. I suspect the perpetrators of many of these cattle mutilations, and perhaps of most of them, and maybe even all of them, are much closer to home. In fact, I think that there could easily be covert human operations at work here that are responsible for the cattle mutilations. They can set up false business fronts, false research fronts, all kinds of false fronts to serve their needs, which they use as a screen to conceal their very dark agendas.
Many believe that the National Institute for Discovery Science in Las Vegas is one such cutout operation, a front for the American intelligence services, which covers up, collects and controls evidence of cattle mutilations. But is it true? From this office block here in Las Vegas, NIDS claims to research a wide range of natural and supernatural phenomena, including UFOs, cattle mutilations, and non-lethal weapons. The man and the money behind it is reclusive billionaire Robert Bigelow. He refuses to give interviews and has even paid photographers to hand over their film in the past. The investigators that we've spoken to are concerned that the Institute is collating a vast database of samples, records, and most importantly, evidence of cattle mutilations, but they're not releasing any information. We asked them to comment.
We're at the preliminary stage of data gathering, and we can't really release a whole bunch of data until we're absolutely sure that it's replicable. Unless we have a minimum of 12 to 15 fresh tissue samples from freshly dead animals, we're not going to be in a position to say anything.
I know that they have come up with certain results that they are not sharing with the public. I know that for a fact.
NIDS says it has no connection to the intelligence agencies, and yet this man is one of their key personnel. John Alexander is an intelligence insider. For over 20 years, he's worked in the shadowy corridors of the Pentagon on covert operations and black projects. Many researchers claim that the Institute is a front for the CIA.
I don't want to get into that.
Could some of those be funded? Could some of those...
I don't want to talk about that on this tape. I already told you.
If covert missions are flying quiet helicopters at night into fields of cattle to sample their organs, the question remains why. The investigators think they found an answer.
The flare in the sky signaled the final countdown.
8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, now.
Northern New Mexico and southern Colorado have both, in the last 20 years, been the sites of underground nuclear explosions. Project Gnome, Gas Buggy and Rulison all took place in areas which were later hard hit by mutilations. In the 1940s, the atomic bomb which ended World War II was tested near Alamogordo in New Mexico, at what became known as the Trinity Test Site. The fallout of this blast spread over much of the American Southwest. For the next 50 years, an estimated 1,000 kilotons of radioactive dust fell on New Mexico, Nevada and Colorado. It's reported that many innocent civilians were contaminated, although this allegedly remains one of America's most closely guarded secrets. Some say that the authorities have been monitoring the effects of this radiation for over 50 years. In a report dated January 1993, the US Environment Protection Agency admits to a massive ongoing animal investigation program in Colorado, Nevada and New Mexico, the very hotbeds of mutilation cases. The aim of the project is the biological monitoring of animals such as cattle, deer and sheep who've been grazing near former nuclear test sites to see what level of radiation they have. Details how animals are sampled in the field, how organs such as lungs, liver and muscle are removed for testing, and how blood samples are taken. It's a blueprint for cattle mutilations.
Tissues that were being taken would be the ideal tissues that you would take off of an animal to determine the level of contamination from the environment. Nuclear and whatever else is in the environment would show up in these soft tissues in the rectal area, the genital and reproductive areas, the soft tissues of the mouth and tongue.
There are at least 4 reasons I can think of why there would be or could be covert government monitoring of the environment. Number 1, this region of North America is downwind from the nuclear test site in Nevada, where hundreds of nuclear blasts were detonated in past decades. Number 2, there have been in past years and are still to the present a few active uranium mines with large piles of uranium tailings, radioactive tailings, both in Colorado and in New Mexico. Thirdly, there have been actual nuclear detonations both in Colorado and in New Mexico in past decades. And fourthly, here in northern New Mexico, there are 2 major nuclear research and design laboratories. So we certainly know that there has been radioactive contamination of the environment in a major way over the past decades in southern Colorado and northern New Mexico.
What we have here is a perfect readout of the entire environment of the United States and Canada, virtually every state in the nation. And I started plotting this against potential sources of nuclear contamination, such as the Nevada test site. And I started looking at that area where that contamination spread, which is documented. And that is virtually the same area that we're looking at for the cattle mutilations in North America. So it's almost an identical matchup.
Since this kind of research has been banned, and yet there's been a need for it, there's a contradiction. There's a state governmental contradiction here. We need that research. We need it, but we can't do it legally. So what do? Go without it? No. Theory of crime contradiction says you do it illegally. You do it clandestinely.
One can't help but wonder if somebody is interested in monitoring the effect of those above ground tests, for instance. Why are there no mutilations, virtually none, in California, which is upwind of the test site?
You put clues like this together and a picture begins to come into focus that may indicate that there are covert elements of the United States government involved in at least some of the cattle mutilations.
These are anomalies that make me wonder if somehow we're looking at some sort of scientific testing program.
If all this is true, the question is, why wouldn't the military just buy their own herd of cattle? The answer, according to the experts, is that they need a random selection of animals to find out the true levels of contamination. One herd in controlled conditions isn't much help if the aim is to find out how much radiation is poisoning American food supplies. Random samples from all over the contaminated areas are needed, and the testing has to be secret to avoid mass panic. So is this the answer to the mystery of the mutilations? Have the US government contaminated vast areas of the southwest United States with radiation from its nuclear test program in the 1950s? Are cattle mutilations a covert monitoring program to test the levels of this radioactivity? Are the levels so high and the contamination so great that they dare not tell the American public? And are the alien sightings and lights in the sky nothing more than a convenient smokescreen?
I think if you follow the buck, if you follow the trail of dollars, I think you're going to uncover the cover-up. I think you're going to find the source of it all. I do believe it's solvable, and I think when it is, we're going to learn more about our government than we even want to know.
I would like to think that we would find who is responsible for these acts. If there's a definite pattern and we're able to gain more experience and knowledge from investigating these, then yes, we could probably come up with a suspect. But I would like to think that the Taos County Sheriff's Department will get its man eventually. Yes.